I'll start sort of gently and slowly here. First of all, welcome to everybody, and thank you all for our guest speakers and experts that are on the phone. I'll introduce you in a moment, or ask you to do your own introductions. But for if you've seen the invitation, you know that this is basically a question and answer session to help the residents of West Newbury understand more about the emerald ash borer, which is hitting us pretty hard this year, and about what their options are and what the process is for figuring out what the options are at your own residences. And so this will continue to be a problem, and we are really in the midst of it. So the tree committee is sponsoring this call, the West Newbury Tree Committee. I'm the chair. My name is Fred Shananya, and part of our mission is to try to assist homeowners in the educational function about what's going on with their trees. And our website is replete with information. But since the emerald ash borer is relatively a new problem in town, we thought that an informational session would be quite useful for everyone. And I know that we have three folks from Bartlett's Tree Service on the line, and they've been kind enough to devote their time to answering questions. Jack Ingram, Kevin Chase, and Dora. I'm sorry, I don't know Dora's last name, but they certainly will be available for questions and answers. And then we have Nicole Kelleher from DCR, who runs the program on emerald ash borers, control, investigations, whatever, for plans and programs for the state of Massachusetts, if I have that right, and if not, feel free to correct me. And we also have Josh Bruckner, who is, my memory is, he's also with the state of Massachusetts, but it's the Department of Agriculture. Is that correct? He's nodding his head, which is great.
That's correct.
And he's also very knowledgeable about emerald ash borers. So at this point, what I'd like to do is to see if any of our guest experts would like to make a comment or two before we open up the floor to questions from homeowners. And what I'll do is we'll keep everybody on mute, if you don't mind. It would be most helpful. And then when you unmute yourself, I will know to call on you to say, if you have a question. And I've got a list of the participants up on my screen, which will help. And the goals for tonight are simply to get our questions answered, ranging from how do we know if I've got any in my trees to what the heck do I do with my dead tree, and what's the state doing, or what can I expect from a tree service company to help me out. So that's sort of our goal, is information sharing at this point. So I'll open it up. Jack, would you like to say anything to start?
Hey, Fred. Sure. My name is Jack Ingram. I oversee the north of Boston area for the Bartlett Tree Expert Company. We specialize in scientific tree care. We have one of our lab staff scientists, Kevin Chase, on the line also. He's the entomologist for the company. Emerald ash borer in West Newbury, it's one of our towns north of Boston that actually has a population of ash trees, and it's not a primary tree, but it is substantial in West Newbury compared to some other communities. Emerald ash borer, particularly this season, the damage is quite evident. So homeowners are starting to realize that treatment in our area, in our neighborhoods, will be required quickly. Otherwise, trees will suffer significantly. So this meeting tonight, I offered my time and Kevin's time just to the community for awareness, to let you know that treatment is available, but there are many trees that may not be able to be saved either. So I can sort of lend some insight to that side of it. Fred, if you'd like Kevin to go over his expertise, we could do that too, but I'll kick it back to you.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
a timely conversation, so thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Kevin, did you want to say anything preliminarily?
Sure. I'll just say hi to everybody real fast. It's lovely to be here and nice to talk to you all. My background is in bark beetles and wood-boring insects. That's what I studied for the past 10 or 15 years or so, mostly the bark beetle side. But my job is to serve folks like Jack throughout the country. Really, any insect issue on any plant, my job is to make sure that they know what products to use, how to be trained correctly, how to train their crews correctly, and just making sure that we take care of your trees in the best way possible. So after this call, if anybody has any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can just use my name, just type in Kevin Chase Bartlett entomologist, and you'll be able to reach me on the website, or I can provide my email address, and happy to answer any questions at any time. But really nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but Nicole or Josh, do you wish to say anything? I certainly don't feel like you have to. These are two folks from the state of Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, I just want to jump in for a second. So my name's Nicole. I'm the Forest Health Director with the DCR. So we deal with a lot of on-the-ground work across the state with EAB. So I have experience. Most of our work is identifying infestations, being able to develop infestation maps and share it with communities. And we also do some treatments on our state parks. Very limited. We don't do a lot of treatment. It's really just to protect very high value, culturally important trees. And we do a lot of biocontrol releases across the state in mostly wooded and forested areas to help establish those throughout the state and be another tool against emerald ash borer going forward. So feel free after this, if you have questions, if you go on the mass.gov website and just search for emerald ash borer, our page is there. My phone number and email address are all there too. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Thanks, Nicole. Josh, did you have anything?
Yeah, so as Fred said, my name is Joshua Bruckner. I am the Forest Pest Outreach Coordinator for the Department of Agricultural Resources. And what I'm in charge of is providing information and education about not just emerald ash borer, but any invasive insect or forest pests to people throughout the state. So besides emerald ash borer, we focus on Asian longhorn beetle and spotted lanternfly, gypsy moth, anything that people might have concerns about. So if there's anyone here who would like either materials or a presentation or any sort of general information, I can provide that. We provide educational programs to people who need them. So, we're on the information side. So anyone who needs that, I'm the one to come to, and I can give Fred my contact information and our website so people can find that easily once this is done.
Great. Thank you, Josh. I think the best thing to do at this point is to see if anybody has any specific questions. If you unmute yourself, I will call on you. And if not, I can certainly ask a few questions, or I see we have a few members of the tree committee on as well. So this is your chance. If you want to ask a question of the experts, go for it. Seeing, Diana? You've muted yourself back. Unmute yourself, Diana, please.
Now I've unmuted myself. My question is, in the past, when they found this infestation in communities, they've gone through massive tree cutting. Is there any planning to do that here in West Newbury at this time, or are we just gonna let it do its natural thing?
Well, we've got two issues here, one of which is the public properties and then the private properties.
Okay.
So I think that, as you know, we're about 57 to 60% forested, and a lot of that is on private land. So to the extent that you have tree cutting, that would be up to the homeowner, and it's not cheap, to say the least.
No.
But I know that Wayne, I'm sure, will want to say something. He's our tree warden and director of the Department of Public Works on what's happening on the public right-of-ways and on the public lands, especially Mill Pond and Pipestave. Wayne, did you want to say a few words?
Thanks, Fred. Right now, we have no plans to address the public right-of-way trees. We did just a quick audit with Bartlett tree on the mill pond to get an understanding about what we're looking at. Obviously, that's going to be a lot of our trees going to be in town land. The edge of right-of-way, we own 10 to 15 feet, and we could have hundreds of trees around town. We're going to have a financial challenge, obviously, and we're going to have to prioritize a high hazard tree because obviously we barely have enough funds to take down 50 trees a year. We're not going to have funds to take down 860 trees. So we're going to have to prioritize which ones are high hazard and remove those as we go. Some of the trees will fall onto private land and the wetland and not be a danger, and others will be. So it's going to be the tree warden's responsibility to do an audit on the trees on the public right of way to figure out a cost it is to remove it, but that has not been done yet.
And Diana, I would add that I had a conversation with one of the state folks and last week, and if you think of our 17 square miles as a landscape level problem where we've got an infestation, we just are not going to be able to deal with, there's no remedy like aerial spraying of all our trees, for gypsy moth or something like that. This is really, unfortunately, more of a tree by tree issue. And so it may well be that a lot of trees die and fall and are left in place. Obviously, you don't want to take the wood to a place, especially if it's not totally dead, to a place where the beetles can, or the borers can infect new trees. But one question that I had on that was, what about, and I talked to Jack earlier, and we were not sure of the answer, maybe Kevin knows, about can we chip? If you have a tree cut down, can you have the tree chipped and then use it as mulch? Or is that another vector for the spread of the emerald ash borer? And Kevin, you might want to chime in on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to try on that. The best work that I know of somebody that's done that is Deborah McCullough. She's at the University of Michigan, Michigan State. And she did a study where she kind of chiseled wood chips to about a 1-inch piece and then different sizes of chips. And she showed there was really no adult survival. After chipping them up, they looked at the different life stages and then they put cages over them. And as long as those trees were down to that size of a chip, about a 1-inch chip, there was no survival rate of that. When it comes to attraction, that's not something I'm really worried about. When the adults are flying, the two things that they're looking for is food. In the spring when they're coming out, they need to feed on the leaves. It's called maturation feeding. So in order for them to successfully reproduce, they need to feed on the leaves. So that's what they're looking for there. And then of course, their mates. So as far as the wood chip pile, we're not, the insect is already in the area. I'm not worried about drawing them in from a longer distance. And as far as creating a very localized outbreak, I don't think wood chips is the thing that you need to be worried about.
Okay.
And I want to jump in from a regulatory perspective. So you guys are kind of near the New Hampshire border. So within the state of Massachusetts, technically moving from town to town or even county from county, there's no official regulation. So there's nothing saying you can't move wood, but we strongly encourage people to not move any ash materials. But when you cross into other state borders, that's when issues kind of happen. So each state has their own rules. So if you want to move something into another state, even if it is chipped, it's best to reach out to that state first and double check. But typically, chipping is an excellent way to, it dries out the wood, kills the larvae, plus the physical grinding actually gets most of them too. So very good option. But if you're a homeowner and cutting down a tree, you already have emerald ash borer in your trees, it's fine to use firewood from that. We try to time it so you're cutting it down in the winter, letting that dry, or in the fall after they kind of come out, they're done flying for the season, let it dry out over winter, letting it dry the next year, or ash dries actually really quickly. So if you wanted to use it the next summer, you're probably able to. But just keeping it, if you're going to use it in a larger format, not chipping it, trying to minimize movement as much as possible to kind of contain that infestation and not spread it to new communities and areas.
And thank you. And Kevin and Nicole raised the issue of timing. And so I have a question about, so here we are in August. And personally, I know I've contacted Jack. We've got 5 ash trees that we want to protect. And so we're going to be talking with him about, you know, the injection side of it. And he might want to talk about that. But my question is, if I'm a homeowner, what is a good time to, other than 2 years ago, what is a good time to have somebody come out who can do an assessment of the trees and say, this one is too far gone, needs to be cut down. Let's see if we can save this one, that kind of thing. Is there a time of year? So I'm thinking, you know, is fall a good time, or early spring, or how does that work from a homeowner perspective?
I'm happy to answer that unless anybody else wants to jump in. Did you want to jump in, Nicole?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as timing goes, for the inspection part, my answer would be as soon as possible, have somebody inspect your tree. Once we get to a point where we see 30% canopy dieback, we really do not like injecting those trees. That tree is probably too far gone to survive. And even if you're at that 25-30% mark, you know, there's a chance that it could recover. Even after injection, that first year, you might still see some canopy dieback, and after that, you might see some recovery. But for those of you who have healthy live ash trees, then as soon as possible is the answer. As far as injections go, springtime is the best. You know, that's when all the water and nutrients is moving from the ground, from those roots up through the shoots. And so, you know, the product that we put into the trees, it really helps to move it with that water. That being said, this is an insect that is so deadly that, and we have a product that can last up to 2 years. So we can inject that tree anytime. We just have to make sure the conditions are right. So for example, if you have a drought, which I know, you know, parts of Vermont and New Hampshire have suffered a drought. To be honest, I don't know exactly where you're at as far as the drought goes. But if we were going to inject trees right now, I'd want to see you water your trees really, really deeply, really deep soak them before doing an injection, just to make sure there's enough water to move that product up a tree. So, but to answer your question, Fred, as soon as possible, have somebody inspect your trees if you want to save them.
And as long as you're on the topic, what about the size of the tree, the age of the tree? It's my understanding that you don't inject very young ash trees, that you only, there's a certain size where you start to consider that as an option.
If you have a tree in your yard that you want to save, you need to treat that tree. Now, as far as injections go, I mean, where we actually drill holes in trees, the size requirement there is 4 inches. We do not inject any tree under 4 inches, but a product that we can just do a soil drench. So we can still protect your tree. That product will not give you 2 years of protection. It'll be 1 year, but you still want to protect that tree. When I was postdocing at the University of Minnesota, my walk every day, I walked through this little forest patch. I saw twigs the size of my thumb with larval galleries. So emerald ash borer does not discriminate against really small stems. So, you know, if there is a small tree in your yard that you want to protect in the long term, you should treat it. That being said, you have to think about the long-term cost of treating that tree. You know, if you have a really small tree, you may want to consider removing that tree and replacing it with another tree, because I mean, you're going to be treating that tree for the life of that tree. So those are some of the economic things that you have to consider. Is, you know, do I want to continue paying to have these trees treated? And you might want to put your investment into the larger trees.
Jack, did you want to add something?
Sure. Hey, so what I heard from you was sort of what time of the year, when, and how to go about getting help with ash trees on your property as a homeowner. So I can lend a couple bullet points for that quickly. Obviously, since this is such it's a serious issue that needs to be dealt with probably this year, just like Kevin said. Conducting a little inventory of the trees on the property, making sure that you've identified them correctly with a certified arborist. You know, using Kevin's 30% methodology of dieback, you can pretty quickly determine whether or not an ash tree is worthy of treatment and care, or whether proactive removal and replacement would be helpful for the site. A couple things sort of mechanically, operationally, I really would like to drive home would be that and I was talking to you about this a little earlier, Fred, ash trees that are dead and have significant dieback from emerald ash borer are can become very challenging to remove and very dangerous. And so I would discourage homeowners from attempting proactive removals on their own, given how dead ash trees can behave. So that's one little safety item that I really wanted to drive home, is because our industry is even creating specific safety guidelines and standards relating to removing emerald ash borer ash trees. So please have a certified arborist just inspect your trees, identify them, help guide you through the process of needs assessment, removal, replacement, treatment, and that's the starting point, just with the inventory. So that's what I had to add, Fred.
Yeah, and Fred, just to jump on the safety thing, within our company, we have a policy that we do not allow climbers into dead ash trees. They're just that dangerous. So just to back up exactly what Jack said, whatever tree company you go with, please make sure that they're certified and make sure that they're not climbing into those dead trees. It's just way too dangerous. And along with that, you know, if you have a dead ash tree close to your house that you know is infested by emerald ash borer, please get that removed as soon as possible. You know, the next ice storm or windstorm that comes by could be a very scary situation for your house. So just from that safety standpoint, that's something I just, you know, heart standpoint, please make sure that your house is safe.
Great, thank you. Other comments, other questions? Wayne, did you have something?
Fred, I just want to really emphasize what Jack and Kevin said. We need to get the message out to everybody. There's 1,000 tree companies around where a guy owns a truck and he climbs trees, and he can remove a tree for probably a third the price of a licensed tree contractor, and he'll take down an ash tree for $500, and then somebody else will come by and give you a price of $3,000. And of course, you say, well, geez, $500. Take a few extra down while you're at it. Ash tree is very unstable. You get somebody going up the ash, they're halfway up the ash tree and they start taking it down and it's 15 feet away from your house. There's two issues with that. One, they know how to take trees down that they can predict how they fall. And another concern is you would have if they're not insured. So if some guy's doing this on the side because he cuts trees down Monday for Friday for the town or for a private company, and then the weekends he does this for side work, I'd be really cautious about, because you're going to get a $500 tree removal for $500. And I know to have it taken down correctly might cost 3, 4, 5, 6 times more. But at the end of the day, when the guy crashes a tree into your house and he says, oh, it was dead. I didn't know it was that dead. He's going to drive away in his car and tell you to go after his insurance, which he might not have. So I have to really emphasize that. I'm not trying to give business to big firms or companies, but they got the equipment to grab a tree if they have to, use a crane to lift a tree. They have many options, and the climate tree is not the best for an ash tree. So I will appreciate Jack and Kevin's comment on that.
And I would add, I'm going to ask for any other questions in a moment, but I would add that on the tree committee website, the West Newbury Tree Committee website, there is a tab on the left side, which is how to find a certified arborist. And so you can go to that, and it's listings from the Massachusetts Arborist Society as well as the International Arborist Society of local companies that that are around that more one would assume, since they're certified, that they also have the proper insurance and the proper training. But you know, you can always ask, but at least that's an avenue to find a company if you need it. Are there other questions from people on the call?
Yes.
Someone named E. Grammer.
So I think about hiking in Montana where they have that bark beetle and worrying about deadfall and having to be careful. Is that something we need to think about for our trails that might have ash trees around them?
So, so you mean like when you're walking underneath a tree that is partially fallen?
No, I'm talking about walking around trails in West Newbury where there are dead ash trees around, presumably still standing because we don't have the money to cut them all down. Do we need to begin to think about the possibility of deadfall for hikers?
Wayne, go ahead.
Right, actually, this is Elise.
Hi.
I would, hi, nice to see you again. I would say that it is a concern that we can't disregard, you know, not take, you know, if we have a lot of 15% or 10% of our trees are dying, then obviously, and they're dying so fast, that it would be a little concern on the back of my mind. I would not think about it. I mean, obviously you could have any tree fall at any time in any place you go. Trees naturally fall down when they get sick or disease or die, and you can't predict that unless you go and inspect every tree. And we don't do that on our trails. But it is a great point to think about. Maybe we, you know, you could get some volunteers to walk the main trails and just see where the ash trees are and figure out if there's any 10 or 15 or 20% or 20 feet off the path that we should really pay attention to. I mean, removing those trees will be a challenge, and I don't know how we'll do that, but maybe even a public education that people just have to pay attention to stuff, because also a tree can get hung up in another tree. And if we could get there in time and try to chop down the rest of it, that might save potential injury or a fall. So I think there is going to be some type of outreach that we need to extend to people just on our trails, in your backyard, because also can happen in your backyard for somebody who doesn't know anything about trees, or on the public right of way in general. So it's a great question.
Thank you, Wayne. And I would ask Nicole if she has a view on, and if you don't, that's fine, on how long this infestation will last in West Newbury based on your experience, with the idea that, well, sometimes there's an eruption of the insect, you know, and the populations reach a climax level, and then they sort of dwindle away because they've used the resources, sort of like the infestation sweeps through an area. Do you have any experience or time frame on that? Are we talking, 4 years, 20 years, 100 years? How long are we going to be living with this beast?
So by the time that trees are really easily identifiable, so the point where you're driving down the road and you're like, whoa, I think that has emerald ash borer, which is how we get a lot of our reports, and how we got the report in West Newbury. Typically the infestation's been there for at least 3 years. So you've had at least 2 generations usually that have emerged, infested trees, caused this canopy damage, had enough larvae for woodpeckers to start feeding. So it's already been a few years by the time you really start to notice it. And typically within 5 years is when you start to see, 5 years from your initial infestation is when you really start to see a lot of mortality. And then between 5 and 10 years is when you lose the bulk of your trees. So usually within 10 years, it's able to move its way through a community. Your town's not huge, so it will naturally keep spreading out from the points where it is, and getting to new trees and infesting them. But within the next decade, you will lose a majority of the ash resources in the community to emerald ash borer, but that doesn't mean it's going to go away. So within those 10 years, we'll still have some ash that will seed, some seedlings that'll come up, and they will be able to sustain new emerald ash borer generation. So going forward, it's going to be a persistent part of our landscape. It's not something that's going to leave. It will always be here. And how our forests in Massachusetts recover, we really don't know at this point. And research has been done out in the Midwest where they've had it for a bit longer, but there's a lot of variability in the results they see, and our landscape looks different from how their landscape looks too. So the type of ash we have, where our ash grows, the different, we have a lot of residential areas. We have kind of breaks in our forests, so how that'll impact how here in Massachusetts we see it, we really just don't know at this point. But working to do things like identify where we do still see ash after an emerald ash borer infestation has come through, and identifying places where it's able to sustain, releasing biocontrols throughout the state to help integrate and be part of that population dynamic with the emerald ash borer going forward, is an important part of it.
And would you just mention in a sentence or two what biocontrols you're talking about, and sort of perhaps if you can just give us a guesstimate on how much of the state might be covered now? It's certainly not 100%. It may not be 1%, but just some feel for, and also I'm assuming, since I tried to look this up and see if I could order some of them, this is not available to the homeowner.
No, they're not. So we have released 3 parasitic wasp species. So there's these teeny tiny little wasps that actually, so 2 of them will inject their eggs directly into EAB larvae, and the other will inject its egg directly into EAB eggs. And they're very host specific. A lot of research is done in their native range in Asia before they're ever even brought to labs here in the US to be researched, and they are reared by the USDA out in Michigan, and they are the ones that provide our program with them. So it's a national program. Other states and other programs like mine work on it out in their communities, and there's a big demand. We have, I think we're up to 32 states that have EAB and that are releasing these biocontrols. So they're not really available for the public at this point. I don't know in the future if that will ever become a possibility. So in Massachusetts, we have released at 18 separate sites, and they've been in Berkshire, Hampden, Hampshire, Worcester, Middlesex, Essex, and Plymouth counties. So trying to spread those sites out, it does take an amount of time for a population to establish. We're just throwing insects out there, and they need to go find EAB, they need to be able to reproduce, find each other, and it takes it takes time for them to really build up enough. And it's usually about 5 years before you see, you can really find them noticeably in the landscape and before they really start moving and spreading on their own. We only first started releasing in 2014. So, and those were the sites out in the Berkshires, out in like Dalton, Mass. So we have very few sites that have reached that point right now. So we're still in the new stage of getting them out into our landscape and leaving them kind of on their own to keep reproducing. And the USDA sets target goals for each type of species of how many they want us to release. And we usually release over the course of 3 years to keep putting a little bit input and keeping those populations going to help them have the best chance possible.
Well, I would just say that we have a very friendly town here, a very insect-friendly town. And so I certainly would volunteer us for one of your release sites. And we have an active tree committee that can watch out for them. So just let us know if you want to use our site.
Yeah, we will. We look for sites that have a dominant ash, that have a lot of continuous ash resource, a good woodlot to give them a good area that they can grow their population and then keep moving on as they're ready.
Well, Barbara, Wayne, I see you, but Barbara, did you have something?
No.
Okay, Wayne?
Nicole, I read that, the emerald ash borer is done when they finish eating, when they take all the ash trees in the area, and then they have nothing to live off of. Is there situations where they will leave some behind and it disappears and it goes away? I just, the internet tells you everything, it's reliable, of course. I just read that, they'll take every ash tree in town, and then once they're all done, it's all over because there's nothing for them to eat anymore. I don't know how true that is.
So with any insect, there's always a small chance that it might miss a tree, especially when we have a lot of urban and planted trees that might not have a good draw or pull to them, but that's kind of a rare instance where they just miss a tree. But there has been observance of trees that survive the initial wave. So when the big population comes through, they'll actually see some trees of all different age classes and sizes. It's been most common in white ash, and researchers are still working on identifying what mechanisms are allowing these trees to survive. So is it something that's genetic within the trees? Are we able to reproduce that and develop new cultivars of these trees to allow us to keep planting ash on the landscape? But that's it's a slow process because you do have to keep growing generations of trees and cross matching and doing a lot of work. So there are quite a few researchers that are looking into it, and a lot of other states that are working to identify where they have these lingering ash trees after the initial wave of infestation comes through.
Great, thank you
Nicole.
so much.
Yeah. Other questions?
Hey Fred, if I may real fast, I just put
Yeah.
a link in. If you go to the chat log, I put a link into the paper that Nicole was just talking about, as far as kind of it's the most hopeful paper I've seen from an emerald ash borer standpoint, as far as, they found, small pockets, but of high density living white ash trees. So if anybody's really keen to read that, I put it in the link.
Great. Thank you very much. I just made sure that I copied that so it would definitely get saved.
Can I ask a question for Jack?
Sure.
Jack, so what would a homeowner expect to pay roughly? I'm not asking for a quote, and I'm not asking you to put you on the line here, but how much would a homeowner expect to pay to have an ash tree treated? I know if you do the coring, it's every other year. So this is not really an expensive, if you're talking about 1s and 2s and 3 type of trees, it's not a huge investment.
Less than removal.
Yes, less than removal.
Per year. So
yep.
So that's, informationally relative to removing just about any ash tree. Treatment for an ash tree that's vigorous and deserves treatment will be substantially less per than removing an ash tree. So, of course, as Kevin said, it's treatment into perpetuity or until, the issue goes away, to be determined. So that being said, treatment is one part of the program, but there could be other things that you could offer the tree to help improve its vigor at the same time. So for that reason, getting your arborist to look at it, and develop a game plan is the first step.
So Jack, there's two types of treatments, I understand. You got the drench, where you drench the soil around the tree, and then you could actually core and put the chemical into the tree, correct? Okay.
So when we discussed that really briefly in the beginning, and not everyone probably heard it, but our preferred method of treatment today that we're offering our customers, given the level of severity of the infestation in town, in the neighborhoods, is this what we call the stem injection or trunk injection, where we take a concentrated material and put it directly into the stem of the tree. The other option, which is an effective option, if it's done properly, is to do a systemic soil treatment where you're using a more diluted version of a product and you're drenching the soil around the immediate stem of the tree so that the root system can work and take it up. The downside to that, especially with city trees or street trees or trees with less than optimal soil conditions, is that the product needs to be applied properly, and it needs to be applied to soil that can accept that material. So the preferred method of treatment that we recommend, and Kevin can help me too, is 2020, we're injecting the stem of the trees if possible. So is there anything you'd like to get to that, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and with the drench, if anybody sees anybody doing drenches, make sure that those drenches are done really, really early in the season, because they're only going to last for a year. And if you start the drench in June or July, the products or the active ingredient that's in those drenches, they take a while to move. So by that time, you might have already given the emerald ash borer a pretty good head start as far as, laying eggs, letting those larvae hatch, and getting into that tree and starting to excavate some of the phloem and causing some damage. So, if we go and do those drenches, we need to do them, really early in the spring, even before the leaves come out or as leaves are just starting to come out. Whereas the systemic applications that we drill into the tree, they can move much faster. That product will be active within the tree in about two weeks, and then in 4 weeks they'll be really throughout the tree.
If you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself. I can see it. Claudia?
Kevin, is the product safe for livestock?
My apologies, Claudia. Is what safe for livestock?
Whatever the product is that you're injecting, the chemicals, is it safe?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yeah. I mean, and that's another really nice thing about, these products is that they are systemic, which means that, we're not spraying high up into the tree for these insects and trying to kill the adults. It's really staying localized right within the tree. I even did a honeybee study this year ash trees are wind pollinated, so there's not a lot of pollinators coming to them anyway. And there's been some studies that, for bees to get enough pollen into their system and into their hive, it's a tremendous amount from an ash tree. And they really don't go after ash trees anyway. So everything from, honeybees we're not too concerned about, and any of your livestock or the kids running around that tree.
Yes, that's great to hear because I too am quite concerned about the neonicotinoids and bees and other insects. So I think that's great to hear.
Yep.
Was there somebody else that had a question I might have missed?
And I'm really sorry, Fred. I'll jump in there real fast. There is an organic option if anybody is like, I only want organic products. There is an organic systemic injectable product as well.
Great. And Josh, I did see that you also posted a link on the chat room. So I'm going to we'll be posting these on our tree committee website for people. So thank you.
Yeah,
And I
just
just-
very sorry. So just very quickly, that link is to our fact page at MDAR. So it gives you some photos of emerald ash borer and their typical damage, some information, and we have links to some resources and documents, some you can print, and there should also be a link to a reporting form. So if you find a damaged tree or suspicious insect and you think it's emerald ash borer, you can use that form to contact us and we'll give you the information you need.
Great, thank you. Nicole?
And I also shared an EAB insecticide fact sheet that goes through all of the different types of products by name. So if people want to do research on what those are. When I treat on the state properties, I use an emamectin benzoate product, and I like to treat in the spring after leaves come out, but before they're fully elongated, to give the tree kind of, while it's moving a lot of materials, the best chance to pull it up and get it throughout the tree. And there's a lot of caveats when treating a tree. You want to make sure it is as healthy as possible. Drought are really sensitive, or ash are really sensitive. They don't like drought. Their bark can also be damaged from like lawnmowers and weed whackers. And if you have that kind of damage on your tree, it causes the tree to compartmentalize around that, and it doesn't move products well past that point. So if you have a tree that is a street tree that has like a lot of damage from like snow plows or weed whackers, those aren't really good candidates for treating necessarily, because they might not be able to effectively move that product up into the canopy where it's really needed.
Yeah, that's a great separate note on when and if to treat trees. And I was going to ask a related question, which Kevin raised, which is, we have a drought here. It's pretty significant. And I've been watering my trees like crazy. So obviously it seems like this is not the time, even though we should get to it as soon as possible. It may not be the time unless I can assure that I've really drenched the soil around it. But I've got some pretty big trees that, I'm probably talking 50 gallons, 100 gallons of water to get over there through a hose. I mean, I'm just wondering about, and maybe Jack has some view on this, as to whether or not waiting till the spring is the way to go for those of us in West Newbury.
My perspective is that you should inject the trees as quickly as you can.
Okay. And do the watering. I would add that for those people that are on the call, we have a well. So when I'm carting 50 to 100 gallons of water around, it's from our well, not from the town water supply.
I have a question.
Kathy, go ahead.
It had been pointed out that there was a lot of trees south of the solar field in West Newbury off of 113 that and I noticed that there was damage to trees along there, and I think I saw in one of your notes that it was due to ash borer. With that large amount of trees affected, there's no way that we're going to treat each one of those trees. Is it recommended that they be taken down so they wouldn't be promoting more ash borers, or do you just leave them and let them die, or what's the recommendation?
Kathy, Wayne addressed that a bit earlier before you got on the call.
Sorry.
But Wayne, did you, and basically at this point, we're considering what the options are. I'm not trying to speak for him, but We do not have the funds for a massive removal project.
Right.
He's got funds for removal of 50 trees that are safety hazards. Those that you and I have seen a lot in those areas are not safety hazards.
Right.
Nonetheless, they certainly are an eyesore, but really, in some ways, I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that around town. And those trees are certainly much more than the 30% of crown damage that Kevin and Jack were talking about. They're impacted like 60, 70% or more. So the only thing to do there is to take them down and remove them, or I guess you just let them stand until they fall down of their own accord. Yeah, I wish there were other solutions to that particular problem, but and I know Wayne's aware of it and he's working with Jack on what kind of options there are, but it's really the emerald ash borer presents communities with a really tough problem in terms of trying to halt the spread, especially because, as both Nicole and Kevin pointed out, by the time you actually notice that kind of dieback, it's already too late. You've got a serious infestation. And so we are where we are. I think, personally speaking, I think, I haven't talked about this with the tree committee, but if we had any recommendation, it was to figure out what ash trees are on your property. And if there's some very special ones that we have a few ourselves that you think are worthy of protection, then you sort of go for the injection route and hope that you've caught it in time. And if you've got 100 ash trees, well, then you certainly, unless you have the funds to do it, which not many folks would have that kind of money to put on into trees, they are going to die, which is it's a sad thing, but it is where we are. Claudia, did you have something?
Nicole, you keep talking about the spring, and I'm wondering, and yet Kevin was saying start now. So does the ash borer, is it dormant in the winter? Does it slow down in the winter?
Yeah, so they are larvae, tiny little larvae feeding just under the bark in the tree. So they'll feed all summer. In Massachusetts, we'll see adults emerge through August. Our peak is usually the beginning of July, but we'll have some lingering adults that'll still come out into August. So in the winter, they're larvae, and they will feed until it gets into the 40s. It gets too cold for them, and they'll kind of just rest up and just wait there under the bark until it's warm enough for them to start feeding again. And then they'll feed in the spring, and we usually see adults start emerging end of May, beginning of June.
Okay. Well, to follow up on that, when you and I sort of communicated, I wanted to trim some of the ash trees. I have quite a few, and trim those side shoots and then begin to treat them, or should I do it in tandem?
I mean, it can, whatever works for you. So pruning and treatments can kind of happen at the same time. You probably want to prune first, so you're not getting product up into parts of your tree that you're just going to cut off. So you're getting as much staying in the tree as possible and not just throwing some of the product away. But other than that, whenever you need to trim and whatever is safe for you to do is the best choice.
And I would add that it seems to me, and the experts can correct me, if you trim early, you give a chance for the stem cells from the cambium layer to sort of create a callus over the trimmed area and may be able to have a better dispersal of the injected material, because the trees had at least a little bit of time to try to heal. Does that make any sense or not? Molly, in just a second, I see your hand up. Just hang on. Any other thoughts? Okay, Molly, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering what life cycle the amamectin targets. Is it for adults or is it for the larvae?
It'll target the larvae. So if your tree has a low level infestation of EAB, so you have some but not a high density, amamectin benzoate can be effective at killing the larvae already in your tree. If you have a lot already in there, it can kind of they can overwhelm it and still survive. So if you already have a lot, it's not as effective, but it is effective if you have new EAB coming and laying eggs. Those larvae that try to penetrate will die. It does also get into the leaves, and the adults do feed on leaves, and there is a chance it can impact the adults. But that's not really where it's targeting. It's going after those larvae that are feeding actively in the tree.
Barbara, did you have something?
No, I don't.
Oh, you've unmuted yourself, so that's the signal for me to call on you.
No.
Okay. Other questions at all? Well, thank you all. I will, before we close, I would just ask if anybody thinks Jack or Kevin or Nicole or Josh or whomever, is there something that we've missed that might be useful for people to hear? I think we've covered a lot of things, but well, great. Thanks all for the participants, especially those experts and state folks that have joined us. I've learned a lot, and this has been really helpful to us. I wish the picture were more optimistic, but I think that homeowners do have a little bit of, we do have some options here in town, and we can save some of the ash trees. And because Jack and I have talked, and my guess is maybe 15 to 20% of our trees in town are ash trees. It might be as high as that. So it is a significant component of our forest here. Wayne, did you have something?
Nope, I just wanted to thank you for this. This was great. And I assume this is recorded so we can replay this.
Yes, I did manage about 4 minutes in to remember to hit the record button. And I'm not sure where that recording goes. I think I know where it goes in my computer.
Okay.
And Angus has offered to have someone help me figure out how to upload it where there can be public access.
Great.
Angus, did you have something?
I was just going to echo what Wayne said. I think it's terrific, the initiative you all have shown on this. This has been very informative. Wayne had briefed me on this right out of the gate when it first came across his radar, and I think this is terrific. And I definitely think it is well worth getting this into the rotation on the local cable and the town YouTube, because I think there's obviously we're in the middle of summer, so people are maybe focused elsewhere, but I think it's really important to get this information out, and happy to help. When you wrap up tonight, Fred, it'll tell you it's downloading the recording to your computer. So just hit it's going to be a convert button, do that. And then once you have the video file, we can set up a Dropbox and we can get that over to our AV tech to get it produced.
Great. Thank you. I'm doing one thing here before I forget, because someone told me something on a Zoom call that sometimes you lose the chat material if you're in a breakout room. So that's why I've copied all the chat stuff into a Word file, so I make sure it wasn't lost. But anyway, I really do want to thank Kevin and Jack. We didn't hear from Dora, but and Nicole and Josh for spending their time and their evening helping us out. That's really, I have a science background, and I'm always very proud of the scientific community that's willing to share time and information with each other. So I really do appreciate it very much personally and professionally as well. So thank you all very much. And we will probably, Angus, we will, once we figure out where that video file is and what to do with it, we'll we'll put out an email blast to everyone to say if you want to learn more, which is a way that for those of you that are not local residents, we reach out to the local residents through a mass emailing. So anyway, thank you very much. I think it's been really useful for me to think about all these issues. So thanks again.